Dosm's Rentals.
Hey YouTube, Dosm Rider here. It's that time of year again, time for my annual holiday buyer's guide. You know, this is usually obviously primarily focused on the stuff I cover in the channel, Toku and PR related, with a few extra picks. I don't have as many extra picks this year, just a couple of books at the very end because I felt like talking about them, but most of my other picks would be stuff that's probably on your radar anyway, like God of War for video games or the Batman for movies, you know, and there's certain things from that I'll probably talk about in my best of the year video, so I wanted to keep it primarily focused on my main coverage outside of a few things, just FYI. But let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about toys first, like primary toy collectible recommendations for my main coverage. Now, no Rider stuff this year because I have not been collecting Rider in a while, outside of a couple little older things here and there. There's a couple little things like the Gates figure art I'm going to pick up. Geats, excuse me. We have the Geats. I'll have the Geats when I get the figure. Point is, I don't have anything to recommend because I don't have anything I can give you an opinion on because I don't know its quality. But so anyway. So, Power Rangers recommendations. First of all is the Megazords. You know, I know the Megazords were on my list last year, but this year we got the Terra Freeze and the Mosarex Megazord, and you can buy them all in a 3-pack. All 3 core Megazords in an Amazon 3-pack, just like last year's core 5-pack. You can also buy them individually, and I gotta give props to Hasbro for actually keeping these on the shelves, at least as far as my area is concerned. You know, I bought them on Amazon or pre-ordered them on Amazon when they came out, but every time I check the toy section, I usually, you know, we'll check to see what they have for PR, and they almost always have at least one of the Megazords, so they did a better job than in Beast Morphers. And I know that these things aren't perfect, but they're really cool. Honestly, I like these a lot. They're like some of the closest to the show suits, period, we've ever gotten. You know, outside of a couple little nitpicks, and one thing I'll mention in a second, I think they're a really good recommendation for both kid and collector alike. You know, the customization of the Lego stuff makes it really fun for kids. For collectors, they're some of the most accurate looking to reuse soldier, you know, suits. Not to mention, with the posability, they just look really cool. Something to be aware of, obviously, if you're a collector, is as of right now, they're not releasing everything that's in it, meaning all the auxiliaries. We have Cosmic Fury on the horizon as of this recording, so there's a small chance they could maybe release some excess Dino Fury Zords, but I feel like there's at least a 90% chance we won't get all of those, so that's worth considering if you're a completionist. Now, speaking of Dino Fury, my other Dino Fury recommendation on this list is the Dino Knight Morpher. Also not perfect, but my favorite Hasbro Morpher release so far. Again, I think a good pick for kids and collectors alike. It's not like the most extraordinary display piece, but it's a solid, you know, mainline display piece for collectors. But kids will get a kick out of the motion features and the key connectivity. It doesn't have a ton of different sounds or anything, but I think for the most part, kids will just have a good time with it. But for collectors, I think the coolest thing about it is actually the fact that it plays various, like, background music tracks from the show, especially the morph music, which I really like. I just think that's really unique, and it kind of is like a sliver of a taste of what you get with the Sentai Artisan line, or the Memorial Edition line, whatever you want to call it. Speaking of, I guess that's a good segue into Sentai. I was going to start with Don Brothers recommendations, but since I just mentioned the Memorial line, there is the Memorial Edition Obirits, as well as the new Ranger keys that came out. You know, it comes with the core ones, but you can order a set of all of the main Red Rangers from before. You can order a set of the ones that came after. There's also a new bonus set in honor of a bunch of, like, minuscule anniversaries, but you also get a Don Brothers one. So, you know, if you're a huge Gokaiger fan and you want the definitive edition that has all the sounds the original did, plus more, with background music and sound bites and all that stuff, you know, it's a good pick for a Gokaiger fan for the wants a definitive. Also, though, if you missed out on the Gokaiger stuff, there's no better way to get it. I mean, it's going to be pricier than the retail of the original release. I don't know how much the original releases are going on the aftermarket, but if you missed out, this is the best way to get it. As for other Sentai picks, I'm going to say Deluxe Don Oni Taijin / just in general, the Don Brothers mecha. You know, they've also taken a step up this year, kind of taken a page from Hasbro's book, making them more articulated, more accurate to the show suit than ever before. I honestly think all 3 that have been released so far, I mean, there's only 2 mecha and then the individual little Phoenix, but all 3 main releases have been solid so far, not to mention they all combine into one mecha with no leftover pieces, which is really nice. You know, I do miss having that, and I think it looks cool on its own. My personal favorite design-wise is definitely Gold's, but if I did have to recommend one, I would say go for Don Oni Taijin. It's the most expensive, but it's also the most impressive. It has the most articulation, the biggest size. It's not the size, mate. It's how you use it. But what I mean by that is I think it's just the best sample of like what they're doing here in terms of improving Sentai Mecha, and the most impressive, and I think the coolest one. Again, not a perfect release, but I really enjoyed it personally. Also, for Sentai related picks is, you can see them back there kind of blurry, is the Sentai figure arts. Now, as of this recording, the only 2 that have come out at regular retail are Don Momotaro from Don Brothers and Zenkaiser from Zenkaiger. I got the 2 right this time. And honestly, I have some mixed thoughts on how overpriced I think figure arts are, but I am really happy with both my Sentai figure arts. I am glad they're back. I think that the older Sentai figure arts were romanticized a little bit, but the newer ones are taking those new improved sculpts and details we've gotten from the updated things they've been doing with Rider and all the other lines, and we've got those improvements now for Sentai, which is great. And both of them I've been very happy with, and if you are at all interested in them or getting figures like that for your favorite characters, they're just the mains for now, but I can recommend them. Quick little insert here because I forgot to recommend Lightning things since I was so eager to use that transition to Sentai items. I wanted to talk about Lightning after main PR items. So for Lightning recommendations, I'm gonna say the Lightning Power Lance, or Power Lances, whichever, singular or plural. I don't think you can buy one half though. Anyway though, I recommend this. I really dig it. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. For whatever reason, I wasn't that excited for it, but once I got it, it was pretty freaking cool. Not to mention it's one of the first Lightning items we got that wasn't something we already did in the past with Legacy. It's really versatile with all the different modes, whether you're kind of swinging it around or displaying it. I really dug the way the light up feature worked around the edges. It was just really cool, and I can recommend it if you like the weapon or a Billy fan or a Triceria Ranger fan or whatever. Also, I can recommend the Power Sword, the Legacy, or I always do that! Legacy and Lightning, Chase and Hobby, the ever-ending battle, or the never-ending battle. Anyway, I can recommend the Lightning Power Sword. It's not perfect, but if you're interested in it or you know someone that's interested in it, I can definitely recommend checking it out, as you don't want to end up in a situation where, they stop making it and it goes for redonkulous prices on the aftermarket. I know the Legacy one, I think, goes for ridiculous amounts now. Not like it's super time sensitive, like I think it's going to disappear forever, but I just say that it's still good enough to check out so that that doesn't happen to you. And lastly, I do recommend checking out the Zap Megazord for you or someone you know. I gave it a mixed review, and I stand by that, but I did also say that I can recommend it at a reasonable price. And this is the perfect time of year to find it for reasonable price, especially when most of the other versions of the Dino Megazord, whether it's the OG or the 2010 Legacy one, 2010/Legacy one, or the Robot Chogokin are going for probably crazier prices. It's nice to be able to pick one up at probably the cheapest price or around the cheapest price that's just on the shelf, if you can find a good price. And problems aside, once you have this thing together and it's sitting there on the shelf, it's pretty badass looking. Now, delving into Blu-ray DVD stuff, like I said, no mainstream picks because it's all stuff that's going to be on your radar. But this year, we do have some Toku stuff. Sentai DVDs are back. We got 5-Man and Aba Ranger, so if you are interested in either one of those, definitely check those out from Shout Factory. Also for Rider, I think 01 released way earlier, but it's still available. Kamen Rider 01 is available on Blu-ray, as is Kamen Rider Kuga. And remember, you don't have to buy these to show your support that you're a true fan, even if you don't want them. But if you do want them, it's really cool we have official releases and they're available, so definitely check those out. Now, as far as comics go, all my comics pick are PR related. I've been kind of bad about following up on or following other comics that I've been into this year. I do have a few non-PR book recommendations, but we got some comic recommendations. First up, we have issue 100 from the comics. Obviously, it's going to be a bit weird if you haven't been keeping up with the comics, but if you have been or just want a piece of history, it's just a cool comic to own. It's a bigger event issue. It's Ryan's last issue as the main writer, Ryan Parrott, I never remember how to pronounce it, but it's his last main issue. It's kind of the end of an era. It's a really cool issue. I can really feel that he put his heart into it. Emotional issue. One of the coolest things about it, too, is the way that the art throughout the book phases through all or most of the different art styles we've had throughout the run. Just a really nice commemoration of the Power Rangers comics legacy so far. Next up, maybe a bit of a controversial pick, but is Power Rangers Universe. This was a very mixed series for myself included, but it's also kind of a neat series with some interesting lore exploring the origins of the Phantom Ranger and the Squadron Rangers, aka the Die Ranger, and just the one Die Ranger. If you're interested at all in the lore they did here, it's mixed, but I think it's worth checking out if you're a PR lore fan. Also, we have Power Rangers and Godzilla's crossover. It's not my favorite thing. I wasn't totally stoked about this because I'm a very casual Godzilla fan. I only really like the new movies, but, I like this more than I thought. It's basically exactly what you get. It's not as good or, I don't want to say as deep as the MMPR TMNT one, because I don't like that one was deep, but it had more substance. It doesn't have as much substance as something like the MMPR TMNT one. It's basically like, hey, if you want to see what's on the cover, you're going to have fun. And that's all it really needed to be. It's a fun comic. My favorite thing about it is the art. I think the art is really cool in it. It's got this kind of art that feels like a throwback to 90s comics. you would see on the shelf, or like when you were at the grocery store and they had comic sections. Like, I don't know, I just really dug the art. So if you like that type of stuff, it's fun. Also, we got the Go-Go Power Rangers compendium here. You know, you don't necessarily have to buy this one as the full compendium. These are really nice though if you're kind of a collector and like these full ones that are easier to buy the whole series in a couple chunks. Volume 2 is coming out down the road. It collects the first 16 issues, all the cover art and the like concept art, not concept art, but character models. And it also has an exclusive story in it. So if you're a fan of it, I can recommend it. I also think this is underrated. I've done a review on it. Just as a recommendation in general, I recommend giving Go-Go Power Rangers a read. I think it's underappreciated. And you, like I said, you don't have to buy the expensive compendium. You could probably find the individual paperbacks for fairly cheap. As far as a few of my non-Toku related picks, this is The Art of the High Republic. If you don't know, the High Republic is the recent ongoing book and comic series set in the era between the Old Republic and like the main movies, prequel era and stuff like that. I recommended a few books before, you know, like just books from this era, and it's pretty cool. It's not like the coolest thing ever, but it's still pretty cool and unique. What I like about this is, like, in general, I just like nerd art books like this for stuff that I read, and I go to a page with just text. But, you know, with this, it's really nice to be able to have art of all the things you see in the books that sometimes you don't know what they look like. You know, they do have a bunch of like concept art and stuff that I'll often have to pull up, like to remember, like, okay, what does this character look like? And so it's kind of nice to have this on hand to like remember what everyone looks like. Not to mention also, if you're not reading it or you're just curious about this era, it gives you some cool insight into what the designs and characters look like. Also, speaking of Star Wars, I was on a bit of a Star Wars kick around this summer, and there's this book here, Star Wars Brotherhood. It's not like the most important story. It's the story about that business on Cato Nemoidia that doesn't count. It's more of a small personal story, but I really like it. I watched an interview with the author Mike Chen on Star Wars Explained, and he has a huge passion for the prequel era, which I really appreciate, and especially these characters. And I think he got the voices of these characters perfectly to the point where it feels like a lost episode of the Clone Wars. So if you're a big Star Wars fan, especially of these characters in this era, I definitely recommend checking this out. Also, I don't know if this is a controversial pick. I'm not looking to dive into Star Wars debate because that can be a very needlessly hot topic. But I thought this was a pretty cool novel as well. Shadow of the Sith kind of bridges the gap between episodes 6 and 7, primarily focusing on explaining some of the things that happened in regards to episode 9 about Exegol, Luke and Lando's story with Exegol and tracking it down, a little bit fleshing out of Rey's parents, the Sith Dagger. I know that it's not the most popular story, episode 9 that is, but I always find stories like this to be really interesting. You know, a lot of cynical people will comment that this book is just trying to fill the gaps, you know, and like bandage things up, which is probably true on a corporate level, but that has nothing to do with the author. The author did a really great job, and I personally find stories like this really interesting, stories that try to bridge a gap or try to fix things and make them unique. And I thought it was a really interesting read if you're interested in seeing how they explain these things. That's it for my picks, you know, of stuff to buy for yourself or others for the holidays. I hope you guys all have a good Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that stuff. And obviously this sounds like I'm going somewhere. I'm not. I'm still going to be posting videos and doing my of the year video and all that stuff. But until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dosm Rider, signing out.